All right, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today at CM World. We are so happy to be here. My name is Josh Baez. I'm Senior Manager of Demand Gen at NetLine. And I am joined today by two very great people. One of them, as you heard, is Dave Fortino, NetLine's Chief Strategy Officer, as well as Arianna Etemadieh, Demand Gen Marketing Lead for Uber for Business, US and Canada. There we go. Dave and Arianna, I'm so glad that you two could be here today. I'm going to be moderating this session between these two as they have a little chat about content marketing and the strategies behind it, specifically how Arianna has led her team to find the success that they have found. But before we get into that, I would love if you two could please introduce yourselves. Dave, do you mind going first and just talking about yourself?
Yeah, not at all. So Dave Fortino, I head up strategy at NetLine, which includes marketing, product, and audience. And so you can think of NetLine as a company that helps B2B marketers have transparency into their buyer's journey, regardless of whether those buyers are consuming your own content or perhaps even your competitors' or peers' content.
Amazing. And Arianna?
Yes, thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Arianna. I oversee our demand generation efforts for the US and Canada for Uber for Business. Uber for Business is the B2B enterprise arm of Uber. We basically allow or help enable companies to give their employees Uber to utilize in their professional lives for business meals, office meals, item delivery, things like that.
Amazing. All right, well, thank you both for being here. We are going to be talking today about how Uber for Businesses leverages content to accelerate pipeline, thinking about the data behind it, the strategies, how you leverage that content and create it. And that's going to be an exciting little chat. But before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about the state of the industry, help set some context for those listening. We all know that marketers today spend a wealth of their time and their resources and their bandwidth doing everything from data collection to content creation to thinking about the channels that they use to execute to measuring that back, and that cycle continues. And I think that a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today are going to be focused around how to get better at that, how to scale that, ways to optimize. And so even with the right formulas that you have, the right data, you still need a really well thought out content strategy in order to make that successful. And so Arianna, I'm really excited to get into that with you today and have Dave here as well to lend some of his own expertise from the NetLine perspective. But let's get into this. So Arianna, you've been at Uber for nearly 3 years. What has it been like creating this B2B unit inside such a massively successful consumer-focused brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. It brings a fun challenge, I think. When we think of content, I think oftentimes our website is the 24/7 brick and mortar that people would go to learn more about what products or services you're marketing to other businesses. But our website historically has been used to encourage drivers to get there and sign up to become a driver or a courier, or for a passenger side to download Uber and Uber Eats. It redirects you to the app. So we have been spending a lot of time building out a demand generation engine within Uber for Business in the last couple of years. That includes making sure that we have the right ICP, that we have the right positioning and messaging, we have the right channels, as well as the infrastructure to support this, a marketing automation platform, a customer relationship management, lead scoring, attribution models, things like that. We have made a decent amount of progress, but a lot of times the challenge that we face is we're not competing against Lyft for Business, DoorDash, Grubhub corporate. It's actually competing against Uber. So how do we get people to understand the difference between Uber and Uber for Business and why they should get their employees to utilize this free platform that doesn't really require any change management, rather than it's a little toggle on your Uber app that you enable when you're taking a ride for business purposes.
Gotcha. That's great. What types of strategies or tactics have you started implementing to help kind of address those challenges? Like, what are the ways that you've been gaining buy-in with the teams, understanding and educating? Because I'm sure a lot of education also has to come into that, where you're not only educating the consumers, but you're also educating the internal folks at Uber about this is how it's different and this is why. So what are the type of things that you've been doing?
Yes, so a couple of things we think about. The platform of Uber for Business enables folks like travel managers, HR managers to gain more insights and control into how their travel and meal policies are enforced. And some of the strategies that we have are a full funnel content strategy. Content is really the cornerstone of our demand generation efforts. Without it, what are we putting on our channels? Essentially just talking about ourselves. And nobody wants to be sold to. People just want to learn on their own time. So we make sure that our content maps to the different stages of the funnel and that we have the right channels to amplify that message. One thing that we did new this year, we're going after a specific vertical. Our solutions are actually industry agnostic. So we don't necessarily need to be focused on, say, banking or technology or the consulting sector. But we do have a new product this year that is anchored really well to the automotive industry. The first thing we had to do is see who in our database maps to the ICP for the automotive sector. We didn't really have a lot of people that did so. So we need to build our database. We need to build our database to nurture them through the funnel and ultimately get them to convert to customers. The first thing that we thought of is content syndication with NetLine. NetLine is industry standard, so adding them to our suite of marketing tech tools is a no-brainer, And the NetLine team has been wonderful to work with. And I knew content syndication is a great way to generate a mass volume of leads that target your ICP because you can identify, I want to hit this level of seniority, I want to hit these industries, these titles, this revenue size, et cetera. And I focus on the big guys, over 1,000 employees and over 5,000 employee organizations. We call that mid-market and enterprise. So there's not necessarily going to be a lot of people that fit that criteria, so we need to be really specific with how we want to go after them and make sure that they're going to become a qualified buyer for our services later on.
That's great.
I think what's really critical there to reinforce as well is that you went down this journey of creating all of this compelling content, aligning it to the buyer's journey and so on. And the reality is that 98% of your buyer's behavior and the content that they consume happens beyond your own website, happens beyond content on social and so on. And so it's about reaching beyond that established kind of owned and operated footprint into places where you don't know they exist. And that's how ultimately this dialogue has occurred, and it's really exciting to hear kind of some of the early stage results and how things are working out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of results too, how did you measure the success of those internal campaigns? I mean, especially when it comes to a pilot program, how do you know what it is that you're even looking for?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that we think about it. We have first touch attribution for our opportunities or SQL, sales qualified leads. We have last touch attribution for MQLs. And then we have multi-touch attribution. We define it in two ways. We have influenced opportunities, so all the activities a lead took before they became a qualified, sales qualified lead. And then there's the accelerated multi-touch piece, where these are marketing engagements that they took while they were in that middle funnel part in the consideration phase. With content syndication, for example, content can map to all of those areas, but we have found that it actually very commonly is within the acceleration phase. Mm-hmm. After these people have met the buying criteria bands, they have budget, authority, need, and timing, they're in our pipeline. But they're still consuming content even while they have an account executive talking to them and helping tailor the solution to their specific needs. So content helps us further our thought leadership perspective because we want to be a business partner to our clients. We're not just providing solutions or services. We are there to help you figure out your business challenges. And so enabling, for example, content syndication, we found is very often used in our influence and accelerated multi-touch attribution as opposed to first touch or last touch.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting in the sense that, and it confirms something that's been well documented, right? That the buyer's journey isn't linear. They're not going from top of funnel to bottom of funnel content perfectly in the world that every marketer would at least dream of happening. And so, yeah, you could have someone mid-cycle, clearly maybe even a contract's out to them and they are consuming top of funnel content. And it's critical to make all of that available to them kind of on demand in a way that they prefer to consume it. The only other thing that I wanted to do is quick hand raise in terms of attribution models, first touch, last touch, multi-touch, not using anything. So first touch, 2, last touch, 4, multi, 2, 3. Okay, no attribution. One. There's a lot of missing hands in here, so, all right.
That math doesn't add up to me.
All right, back to you.
Well, yeah, this is great. I think that what I want to get into next is how you have found success with your content marketing. So we've done a little bit to set the context of how you've been putting these campaigns together, how you've been using things like content syndication and attribution to measure the success of those programs. But now when it comes to building out this strategy, I know that a lot of people who are at this event today, these are the content marketers, these are the people on the front lines who are doing this work to develop this content and put it out there. So can you talk a little bit about the long-term play of your content marketing strategy, thinking about not only the quick wins that you've had, but also your process for how you've developed this content strategy for the future as well?
Yeah, I think content marketing is a long-term play most of the time. I think us being able to generate quick wins would be, we got this high-powered executive from a large company in our database, and now we're interested in nurturing them to ultimately become an opportunity. But a lot of the times, the value of increasing our brand awareness, whether that's measured through a brand tracker or something similar, of the, let me think about this a little bit. Well, I suppose when it comes to long-term content plays, it's also how can that content be referenced later down the line. So for example, like Dave was saying, people who are often within the later stages of an opportunity are still consuming our content. And it will be thought leadership content that they're actually consuming because their problems are still continuing until hopefully they use our solution and all their problems are solved. And we have found that for some contacts, we're able to land and expand, if you will, because they're consuming this thought leadership content even after they've become a customer. So then we're able to generate contacts in other departments, which enables cross-sell. And we are able to increase the value of an account because we're getting our foot in the door with something that's more lighter touch than a salesperson saying, for example, hey, can you connect me with your finance department? Can you connect me with your human resources department? So I think the long-term play is eventually getting people to think of Uber for Business as well when they are in a corporate setting, beyond just simply Uber. Yeah. And also getting people to come to us as, like I said, that business partner, because we're able to leverage the expertise of our 30,000 person organization, the executives in that organization, as well as having the largest mobility network in the world that affords a lot of insights into things like logistics, as well as what's happening with over our 170,000 global clients.
Yeah, that's great. Then when it comes to the priorities that you set, as you are starting out, what is it that you usually think about first for your own process? Do you start with the audience? Do you start with a content idea that you have? Yeah. The channels of distribution? Like where do you start that process from?
Market data, 100%.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yep. What's going on in the market? What are we hearing from our customers? What is Gartner? What is Gallup? What is Forrester, Edelman reporting on? I very much believe in letting the data orients an approach. I think a lot of times, sometimes we move quickly, sometimes data isn't available. And we have to, there's this phrase I hear, oh, my gut tells me, et cetera, et cetera. But we found there's actually a study with Levi's way back in the 80s. They had two pairs of jeans. One was for the casual jean wearer, and the other one is for more business professional purposes. They were anchoring the business professional jeans to be a little bit cheaper than the casual jeans because they wanted it to show that we can save you money as opposed to you having to go get your jeans tailored for a formal event. That is what their sales team, that's what their gut instinct said. This is gonna work because it's gonna be cheaper. They actually had focus groups that showed that their customers were saying, we don't mind spending more money on tailored jeans. It actually helps it feel more personalized, helps it feel more sophisticated. But the executives were of the mind of, nah, they're just gonna go with what's cheaper, even though Levi's is already a decently priced product itself. What they found is they launched this product and ultimately it fell flat, didn't succeed. The executives actually had to step down because it was just not a good failure, not a good process. So all that to say is first thing is we want to know everything about our ICP. We do all the research, we have the focus groups, we look at the macro data trends, and then from there we start to define the content strategy. What pieces of content will map to different pieces of the funnel? What are we going to talk about? Who are we going to be talking to? And then the third piece is the distribution. What mediums of content will best map to the channels of distribution? Webinars, for example, video content, could that work well with, for example, content syndication? Could it work well promoting it on LinkedIn? LinkedIn could promote webinars, it can promote videos, it can also promote white papers, it can promote images, and we could drive them to our landing page. That part is kind of more where in the demand side we come in, but my content team does a tremendous job of making sure that we have pieces of content that match what the customers need throughout their buying cycle.
Yeah, great. Dave, I actually have a question for you. When it comes from your experience working to gain buy-in across functions, what are some of the ways that you look cross-functionally from, especially thinking about content marketing as a function?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate in the sense that we're sitting on top of a platform that generates around 6 million leads a year for companies like Uber for Business. There are billions of data points that allow us to understand ICP behavior in every market, in every geo region, every job function, job level, company size, and so on. And so we highly benefit from our own tools. One's called Intentive, one's called Audience Explorer, which I'll share for free at the end, that allows you to have real-time transparency into what your ICP is doing. We then mine that data, allow that data, the actual raw buyer behavior, right? This is exactly what the ICPs are doing, the types of content that they're gravitating to, the formats of content that they gravitate to. And then we're reverse engineering that to kind of meet them where they are versus creating content that's written maybe in the right voice and tone, but isn't meeting them with the format that they appreciate and consume the most, or perhaps not the right channel, and so on. It also allows you to have much deeper insights into saying that we're going to go to a vertical. We could say, well, we're going to go into a vertical, but then also focus on creating content based upon the level of sophistication of people in that vertical. So like we've got a ton of enterprise-oriented content that we push out to educate, obviously, enterprise B2B marketers. And then we have something as simple as like, I forget what it's titled. It's like the guide to content syndication for your boss. And it's basically like a business case that a person can go and read. They check some boxes, fill in the blanks, and then they can take that to their manager or VP and educate them. And those tend to be industries where they're not sophisticated marketers, or at least not sophisticated marketing organizations. So anyways, it's all about using data. I think we've both mirrored that. It's just we're using actual buyer behavior and mining that real time to inform our decisions. And getting to the point of we guess or our gut is telling us things that generally doesn't happen. A lot of our clients, typically a CMO is doing that all the time, and almost always they're wrong. So use data to inform those recommendations versus gut choices.
Yep, that's great. I think that one of the ways that I want to wrap up this section before we move on is that just acknowledging that content marketing is a very rewarding role, but it can also be tricky when it comes to measurement. So we've been talking a lot about data, but when it comes to measuring the results of that content, what are some ways that, Arianna, and we can start with you, that you would recommend teams go about measuring the success of their content? Are there any KPIs or ways that maybe like early indicators that you share with those listening?
Yeah, I think about it in a couple of ways. I say that there's something called macro outcomes, for example. What are the business impact that you're making against revenue, against pipeline, against even things like leads generated? And what's interesting is content is so versatile, right? There's various mediums, and I would actually argue, we have found this for sure. Our emails via email nurtures actually tend to generate a good amount of content. They're actually also a medium that really accelerates pipeline. We've seen, for example, one shining use case I like to highlight is we got this great executive lead from an enterprise organization that we were trying to get into for months. And it actually came from them consuming content via NetLine. And what ended up happening is they download this ebook and they forwarded it to their travel manager. And they said, hey, can you reach out to Uber for Business because we want to hear more. And now they're actually a late stage opportunity, and we got that way in through something as light as a thought leadership ebook. So that's one way I attribute content. The value of that deal has helped generate X amount of pipeline, which is tremendous. Another way to look at it is the micro outcomes. What impressions is your content getting? What is the open rate? What's the click-through rate? The different metrics that are typically afforded across different channels. With LinkedIn, it could be how many forms or form fills are getting filled out. Same thing with landing pages, time spent on page, things like that. And I think that micro metrics should help inform ways to optimize the content that ultimately help optimize the macro outcomes against we can tweak our content this way to help generate X more revenue, to help accelerate the velocity of deals by, let's say, 1.5, things like that. So those are a couple of ways I think about it.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I would say my only caution internally in orgs that are thinking these things through is lean heavy on the revenue side of attribution and anything that you can find to scrap up a story around pipeline. All of those other metrics are critical in optimization, understanding like your day-to-day job, but your CMO and CFO don't care about those things. They care about what's paying the bills, right? So that's that balance for a marketing team to figure out about what's internally important to you and then what's externally and more importantly, like upwards more important to the organization to share.
Mm-hmm. I do have one thing to build on
yeah,
that.
please do.
Content is also a way not only in generating leads, but it helps encourage brand awareness, right? To make people associate your brand when it comes to a certain topic based on the expertise you're able to give. One thing that we have seen as we have invested more in specific channels that host our content, we have seen a positive correlation in organic or direct form fills, which helps tell us that our content is positioning us in a way that people are thinking of us, perhaps in their off time when they're eating lunch and, they had a menu that they wanted on Uber Eats that, they couldn't order at the time, things like that. So while, yes, a lot of times executives want to point, how is your content relating to revenue? There is also that piece of, but by increasing our brand awareness by, say, 100,000 impressions, we were able to see a correlation in more leads generated, in deals accelerating, in the pipeline increasing as well.
Yep, makes sense.
That's great. I just got a note that said 5 minutes left, so let's move into this goes by so fast. Let's go into some key learnings. Summarizing everything that we have been discussing so far today, I want to ask 2 questions to you, Arianna. Is number 1, what has your content mix looked like recently? Okay. And also, what is your maybe like top tips or recommendations that you would want to give to other marketers who are thinking about wanting to grow or mature their own content strategies? Yep,
Great question. So media mix, we have had ebooks, we have one-pagers, we have webinars. We've recently had graphics for out-of-home advertising. We have, let me think of a couple others. We have blogs, of course. Articles, those are a couple of the media mix that we have to mind. It is a lot of written content. One area that we're going to expand on next year is video content because we know that's just becoming more and more how people like to consume their information, especially passively. Podcasts, everyone talks about podcasts. We're not leaning into podcasts, but there is that medium as well. When it comes to, could you remind me your second question?
Yeah, what are some recommendations that you would give to marketers who might be wanting to advance their own content marketing strategy, similar to how you've grown that function at Uber for Business?
Yes, okay. The way that I think about this is always anchoring it in audience insights, so going back to market orientation, as opposed to product orientation, which a lot of companies will do.
Interesting.
We have a new product, or for example, people will say we have a new product or a new feature coming out. We have to create a pitch deck. That's another concept we use. We have to create a one-pager. We have to create a video tutorial, things like that about this specific feature. But what is, as always, the problem that this feature is solving? How do we create content around that? Another pro tip I give is we like to leverage our executives a lot when it comes to the thought leadership content because they are thought leaders. When I think of someone like Dave, right, who has decades of experience in content strategy.
She's repeated this like at the lead up to this event. It makes me uncomfortable.
But still, that's decades of a lot of experience seeing different market.
Decades.
She's saying I'm old. Can you reinforce decades again, please?
Yes, just double digits. But that's decades of seeing how the market has evolved, how audiences audiences have changed, how even content has evolved over the last few decades. And so I think when it comes to, for example, I want to create thought leadership content, where do I start? Well, start with executives. One, it helps increase their personal brand so they get something out of it. But two, it helps give your thought leadership content an authoritative perspective because of the vast experience that they're leaning on.
Thank you. Dave, any last minute thoughts or recommendations from you?
I think that was elegantly said, so I'm not going to riff on that. I think we probably have like a minute left, right? I'm assuming something like that. So why don't we transition to Audience Explorer? And so this nicely first of all, it's a free tool and it's ungated, so don't worry about us trying to figure out who you are and pitching you or anything. So you can take a picture, scan the barcode later, or do it now. It'll drop you off at Audience Explorer. Audience Explorer was designed to really provide a live, transparent view into B2B buyer behavior and content consumption at scale. And so the tool allows completely free access to 180 days worth of content consumption behavior by job function and/or by industry. From there, you can slice and dice the data based upon who you think your ICP is. You can start seeing the types of content that they gravitate to, their engagement levels, their company sizes, and so on. But you can also look at it from another perspective of maybe being a little bit more loose around your ICP and seeing, like, I know you're trying to target VPs and above in companies of X. Well, it turns out those people don't really consume much content. And when they do, they're consuming this type of asset that allows you to really educate at a very, very specific way your content strategy. The outcome is that you probably have to create more content, which I know no one wants to hear, but that's the truth if you want to do it well. But using a tool like this is invaluable. We have obviously paid derivatives and/or subscription variants of this, but this is a phenomenal asset. If I met somebody at a bar, they're a B2B marketer, I'm like, check it out. We give away a ton of free data, and it'll help you, and you don't need to call us. We hope you find it valuable. We hope, to your point, it builds some brand credibility and loyalty, and then you'll give us a ring when it's ready. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Arianna, so much for joining us today. That wraps up our session. So thank you all, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.